Welcome to the Nick Blevins Family Ministry Podcast. Our goal is to help you maximize your church's potential. You'll hear from top leaders in children's, student, and family ministry about the principles and practices they use. Now here's your host, Nick Blevins.
What's up, everybody? It's episode 117 of the podcast. If you have been listening recently, you know that some friends and I, Kenny Conley, Kevin Monahan, and I started a company called Ministry Boost. And we're going to offer training and coaching and consulting for leaders in children's and youth ministry and next gen ministry, like most of you who are listening to this. And this fall, we are launching courses and coaching in partnership with Orange and You Lead Coaching. So if you're interested in taking courses maybe on implementing small groups for kids and students, or recruiting volunteers, or implementing a coaching structure where volunteers lead other volunteers, so you don't have to do that all on your own, or maybe it's something else like partnering with parents that you're interested in, preschool ministry, or aligning your next gen team. I, as a next gen pastor, for instance, was always interested in how could I align my next gen team, like children's ministry and student ministry, to get everybody on the same page. Well, whatever course might interest you, or maybe it's coaching, where if you do coaching with us in a partnership with You Lead, you can get a course for free. That might be the way to go, and maybe you'll be in that coaching group for 6 months. I'll be leading one on children's ministry, but we have them for student ministry, next gen, multi-site, and women who lead. You can find out all the information about all of that at ministryboost.org. Look under training for those courses and click coaching for more information about coaching and getting a free course with that. Well, in this episode, I talked to one of the You Lead coaches who's also doing a course with us, and that's Erin English. And Erin and I talk about her preschool ministry. I had Erin on the podcast back like in January maybe, and we were going to talk preschool ministry, but in the conversation that she and I had, I learned that she had grown her volunteer team from 250 volunteers to 400 volunteers. It's a larger church, obviously. And I said, we got to talk about that, you know, because regardless of where people serve in ministry, they're going to be interested in how you grew that team. So we did. You might want to check out that episode. So in this episode, we finally get back to talking preschool ministry. And we just kind of go through what does preschool ministry look like at her church? When did they make the big shift from kind of a class-based, almost like a weekday preschool feel, to the model that they have now, which they really liked? And how did she make that change? What was involved? All of that. So if you serve in preschool ministry, you're going to love this. If you lead children's ministry and that's part of your role, you're going to love this interview. And all of the links and notes and everything you can get are available at nickblevins.com/episode 117. But let's go ahead now and jump into my conversation with Erin English about preschool ministry. Well, it's good to have Erin English back on the podcast again. Welcome back, Erin.
Hey, thanks for having me.
So for anyone who didn't hear your first interview on this podcast, which was just like, I don't know, 8 months ago or something like that, episode 83, I think, we talked volunteer recruitment, which everybody wants to talk about. But the thing I wanted to talk about was that, because that you had a great story there of going from, I want to say it was like 250 volunteers to 400, but I also want to talk preschool ministry because that's what you do. But for anyone who didn't hear that, go listen, but also introduce yourself again before we jump in and talk preschool, early childhood ministry.
Yes, Erin English. I live in the Kansas City area in a town called Lenexa. I've been serving in kids ministry for 16 years. 11 of those have been at Westside Family Church here in Lenexa, grade school. And now I'm currently in the preschool ministry director role there.
Awesome. And people, you know, we call it preschool ministry in our church. I don't know is that what you call it there?
We call it, so when I became the preschool at the time it was preschool director because it was just birth through preschool, but we took kindergarten under our umbrella. So we changed it from preschool ministry to early childhood ministry.
Gotcha. So a lot of churches I find have kindergarten in preschool already. You made the shift to put them back almost.
We moved them. Yes. And I
hold them back like you're not going up. Just kidding.
No. And I had a kid that was in preschool. And having older kids, I just realized like he's closer, like developmentally, even though he's now in kindergarten, he's closer to what a preschooler looks like than what a grade schooler looks like. So John and I had a conversation and I said, I think it just makes more sense for our culture and our church if kindergarten is under our umbrella. So we went for it and it's been a good fit for us.
Cool. So I want to talk all about your preschool ministry, like how does it work and all of that stuff. But you've told me that you've made a big transition. I don't know if it was a few years ago or what. So I'd love to hear what was it like maybe before the transition, and then we could talk about the transition and what it's like now.
Sure. So when I took on the role of preschool director at Westside, about 5 years ago, preschool ministry looked very similar to what you would see or experience in an actual preschool setting. All of our classrooms had home living centers with things like play kitchens and baby dolls, high chairs, and the like. And we had books out and blocks for boys and girls to play with. And our ministry hour was specifically center driven. So while kids played freely, our classroom leaders would use Bible conversation to teach them while they were playing. We had a Bible story time during the hour where our classroom leaders would gather the class and read the Bible story. And we also included a worship song to teach during that time. So in addition to that, during the ministry hour on assigned Sundays, our classes also had access to a small indoor playroom where they could take the kids for 10 to 15 minutes to play and move around before returning to class for a snack time. And if the weather was nice, we also had an outdoor playground option. And all of that was supposed to happen in about a 15-minute service hour. So the win of that ministry model at the time was our preschoolers did have a lot of fun at church.
Did Westside actually have a weekday preschool?
No.
Daycare? Okay, so this was built just for church.
Yes, we don't. We do use our environments during the week for, like our moms group that meets and stuff for childcare and stuff. But no, we do not have a preschool environment. It's just the way that we set up the classroom. It looked like what you would, and I think that's true for a lot of churches. That's just how we've always done preschool ministry. And a lot of times it's just nursery care. So for a long, long time, people weren't really even intentional. Churches weren't intentional about teaching kids about Jesus until they were probably 4 or 5. And we start, by the time we get them at 6 weeks, we're already beginning to talk to them about church and God and Jesus.
That's awesome. So how long ago was that when it was when you made the transition?
So I became the director about 5 years ago, and we moved pretty quick. And, in hindsight, I know why John moved me to that position. Not only was I sold out for the vision and strategy and structure of both our church and the family ministry under his direction, and excited to champion what he calls, John Huber, what he calls the 2 non-negotiables of ministries, relationships, and the gospel. But I also had 2 kids in preschool ministry at that time, as well as 2 older children who had come up through that current ministry model in preschool. And then also in the small group, large group ministry model that our grade school operated. And now they were entering into middle school and high school. And one kid was connected relationally to a small group leader and one was not. So I think he probably recognized I was going to be able to really champion what he envisioned for the preschool ministry and take it to the next level.
So what did that change look like? Obviously, I'm imagine it's a very big change. You're going to walk us through what it looks like now.
Yes.
How does it operate? But just the change itself, what did that look like? How'd you make that happen?
Okay. So when I became the preschool director, I have to tell you about my kids because it just makes sense for why we moved so quickly. But at the time, my youngest 2, my daughter Eden was 2 at the time, and my son Eli was 5. So on Sundays, now that our grade school's upstairs and our preschool's downstairs, and my husband brings our kids to church. So now I'm downstairs in the preschool environment with my 2 little kids. And on Sundays, Eden would come out of her 2-year-old classroom singing and dancing. And at 2 was picking up each week's worship song and singing and dancing her way through the week. Jesus loves me. And Eli came out of his class at 5 talking about Mr. Scott. So Mr. Scott was faithful to bring treats on birthdays. He, including Eli, he also was the authority on all things. I could tell Eli the sky was blue, but if Mr. Scott told him the sky was blue, well, Mr. Scott knows everything and is in the authority on all things. So he sent Eli a birthday card on his birthday. He would stop us in the hall to tell us something fun Eli had done in class or ask us about something Eli had shared in class, like when grandma was sick. And Eli even, it's so funny, for about 2 weeks that year, he decided he wanted to be called Scott. Like his name was now Scott at home. So he had a real relational connection with Scott. So with my experience leading leaders in grade school and helping people both discover their gift sets and then use them accordingly in that setting, I realized pretty quickly that my daughter had a worship leader leading her classroom. And Eli, though he wasn't experiencing the same worship or the same Bible story that Eden was, he did have a relational leader, which is what we called in grade school a small group leader. So as we continued to build relationships with our leaders in the preschool ministry, our team began to identify and then also affirm the God-given talents we saw in those leaders in the classroom environments and began the conversation of like, what if? So it wasn't easy. I won't suggest that it was easy in any way, shape, or form. And change is hard for even the most adaptable individuals. But the dream of providing each child in our ministry the opportunity to experience the relational connection that Eli was experiencing, as well as the engaging worship and Bible story time that Eden was experiencing, made tackling the transition and the growing pains of that change completely worth it. So we started small and turned that little playroom that leaders sometimes were taking kids to, we turned that into our quote unquote large group environment. We found a gifted builder in our church family and just shared kind of a makeshift vision for what we think a set would look like. And, we scoured the internet to see kind of what was Orange doing. And with under like $200, he built the most incredible little like clubhouse set that we still use it for our 2-year-olds. But we hosted a lead small training, which Orange was so good at providing us just the resources to put on a really dynamic lead small training where we could begin to carry and cast that vision for what this could look like for preschoolers. So we talked about how preschoolers learned and the importance of the relationship being the glue that binds the biblical truth to their heart. And then we showed them in that training kind of what large group would look like and affirmed our small group leaders in the win of showing up and just building relationships, which they would do together by now attending and participating in large group with their few. So before, where we were asking our classroom leaders to be all and do all, they were the Bible storytellers and the worship leaders and the ones who were supposed to relationally connect with the leaders. Now we were using our volunteers in their uniqueness and with their gift sets to serve in the kingdom in a more impactful way by using those gifts and talents to engage preschoolers in the Bible and learning about Jesus. I'm not gonna lie though, it was so tough. And I had like longtime early childhood development educated teachers who really pushed back pretty hard. And, I had to learn kind of to navigate the difference between, critical questions and curious ones. And I just continued to cast and carry the vision and the mission and strategy of relationships being our first priority in kids ministry at Westside. So like one of the pushbacks I got was concerning how are kids going to learn to exercise their gross motor skills without a playroom. So I realized, okay, that's someone who's just asking a curious question. And so I took the opportunity to kind of explain how limited our time is with kids each week. We have, honestly about 45 minutes at best. And how we would be exercising those gross motor skills in large group as we taught 2-year-olds and 5-year-olds and every age in between how to use their whole body to worship God during that corporate worship time, as well as teaching them motions that would help them memorize God's word each week with motions that they could then take home and teach their parents. And nothing now on this side of it. I love getting videos from parents or seeing them post them on Facebook of like their 2 and 3 and 4-year-olds singing one of our clubhouse worship songs or reciting a memory verse that they've learned in our corporate, worship and Bible story time. And the playground that it's not part of our ministry hour anymore, but we still have a playground. And it's become a really cool place for parents and kids to kind of hang out and connect together after the ministry hour and before they head home. So the best part for me personally as a parent now, I get emotional even talking about this, is I'm seeing our leaders get it. And my daughter's small group leader from that first year that we moved from kind of the center driven to the small group driven ministry, her leader that year when she was 2, Miss Shanna, has promoted with her every year and is her group leader this year. So Eden's in first grade now and is in grade school ministry upstairs but Miss Shanna has gone with her. And I have no doubt that God willing, Shanna is still at Westside when Eden is 16. Miss Shanna will still be her small group leader. And that is the win. And as a leader, being able to encourage and equip and provide opportunities for people to use their gifts and talents that God has blessed them with in specific and tangible ways, there's just nothing better. I get like a front row seat to see ministry and life change happen in all directions with our kids and with our leaders and with their families.
As you were talking about the change there, and you started with leaders, which I think obviously was really smart. I want to go back to the comment you made at the beginning, which like the rooms were designed like a preschool. Did you change them? Did you take things out that were,
Yes, we did. About it, I didn't do that immediately. So honestly, we just called our classrooms small groups. So all those, the home living and the blocks and the books that I talked about earlier, those actually stayed in our classrooms. And I actually was at the Orange Conference that same year that we started the small group ministry model. And I was visiting a church there and just kind of viewing their preschool ministry. And like I went into one of their preschool classrooms and there was nothing in the classroom. And I was like, well, where's all your stuff? There's nothing here. This doesn't look fun. And the preschool director at that campus just explains, like, we only add stuff to the classroom that we know leaders are going to use to engage kids in the Bible story for that week. And so me and my team, we just stood there for a minute and just, oh my gosh, I was like, I just picturing like preschoolers and leaders just rioting in the halls if we had naked classrooms. So having experienced, just the tension and change and how slow people are to warm up, we went home and I said, let's just cast the vision. Let's find our two best, quote unquote, small group classroom leaders and kind of cast the vision of this. And we'll just try it for a month and see if it works. And so we cleared out one of our classrooms of everything, the home living, the baby dolls, the books, and we called it our bare naked classroom. And the only thing we added back was 2 small rugs. And then each week we provided just enough. So just the activities, the games, the application, the art projects or whatever that leaders would use to engage their kids when they came back from large group for small group time. We didn't do it in our 2-year-olds. They still have their home living centers, and we're beginning to introduce the idea of small groups. At the end of class, they're doing like a 5-minute prayer time where they try to gather they're like kittens, try to gather their kittens and pray with them. But in our preschool classrooms, we did clear out everything. And we found really quickly that the kids, they didn't riot. They actually were more engaged with their small group leader and participating without the distraction of all the stuff in the classroom. So within the month, we said, we've got to do this. We can demonstrate how this has been a win for this one classroom. And we cleared all 9 of our pre-K classrooms and call them bare naked. They're all naked classrooms now. It's been a huge, huge win.
Did you get a lot of pushback?
No, because we had, we just knew that change was going to be kind of a long game, and we approached it with one. And rather than just going in and taking all of that stuff out of the classroom and surprising the leaders, we just moved slow. So we started with one classroom and we watched closely and took pictures. And we have a Facebook page for leaders. It's a closed group for our leaders that we use to share the lesson and post encouragement. So we just talked about it a lot there and showed pictures. And I think in the other classrooms where leaders they had caught the vision for small group and building the relationship. But even stepping in and supping in some of those environments, it was hard to keep all of the kids engaged because one little boy would want to go play blocks. So it was, it just made it more challenging to have that small group time. So I think sharing it that way and showing, the tangible ways that this really was working, it was probably the easiest transition that we made. And I really thought this is going to be awful. Like the leaders are going to be frustrated. And it wasn't. It was probably the easiest thing we've done is clear out those classrooms.
Now, I don't know if this changed, when you changed all that stuff, but in terms of your preschool ministry now, what does it look like in terms of the structure of like volunteer teams and age groups of kids? Like, do you have a coach, like volunteer level that is a volunteer who leads other volunteers? Like, how does that work in terms of the staff leading volunteers and then how kids are grouped in rooms on a Sunday?
Yes. So we do have a coaching model, and we have had a coaching model, gosh, for before we even moved to the small group, large group ministry model, we realized it helped us do ministry better. Like if Jesus had 12 disciples, it doesn't make sense that I would have 90 volunteers that I would be responsible for. So we built a coach ministry model that our team leaders are now building relationships with their coaches. They're encouraging them and equipping them and spending time with them, building relationships, discipling them, and really then also modeling what that looks like as far as the coach now to the small group leader. And then, of course, that gets reflected down from the small group leader to the kids. So at each ministry hour, we really, really highly, highly encourage weekly leaders. And that is, again, because of that relationship and the Gospels being our two main priorities. So we're constantly casting that vision. Of course, it's okay. And I tell leaders when we recruit them that, because that's honestly, there's new volunteers have so many, they just disqualify themselves for a million different reasons. And I've never sat down with a new volunteer who didn't disqualify themselves for some reason that, they're busy or they don't know enough about the Bible. You name it. I've heard it. So we really are also our goal is for a weekly leader. That doesn't mean that you can't go to the lake with your family one weekend. And that's what we're here for, is to fill in. And we do have a sub team. I always use the example of one of the gals who is on our flex team or our sub team who she just can't commit weekly. She's got fibromyalgia and she just doesn't know from week to week if she's going to be healthy enough to serve. But she sure loves to fill in when she's well and a leader needs to be gone. So I always kind of explain that and cast that vision for, we want you to serve weekly, but it does not mean that you're signing and, you're signing until Jesus comes back that you're going to be here every week. We get it that families are busy and can't always be here. But then, So every ministry hour, we do have weekly leaders, and so our ministry is kind of broken up. I have a team leader who's responsible for ministry that happens with our small group leaders and kids for birth through 2 years old. So that team leader oversees a different coach at each hour. So we have 4 a.m. services and 1 5 p.m. service, and she oversees the coaches, a different coach at each hour. And that coach then is responsible for team building with the team of small group leaders who are in each of those environments, whether it's our nursery classroom for infants. And then we promote according to development with our infants. So once they start crawling, they're in a crawling room. And then once they start walking, they get promoted to our walking 1-year-old classroom. And then after that, we promote once a year because once they're walking developmentally, the 1-year-olds, if they're all together, all the walkers are together, they're not running over our crawlers, and our crawlers aren't running over our infants who are learning to sit up. So that's why we promote according to development there. But once they're walking, that's the core group of kids and leaders that they're going to be with as they promote once a year each year, because we want them to begin even at 1 or 1.5 to begin to build relationships with the leader that's going to be there each and every week, and also with the kids in their quote unquote small group. So then the coach would oversee all of the leaders in that age group. And then we do a 3s through pre-K team, which is another section of our hall. So our 3 and our 4-year-olds. And then our kindergarten students, because once they go upstairs to grade school ministry, we have large group, small group environments. So there's one large room that our 1st and 2nd graders start and stay in for the ministry hour, and same with our 3rd to 5th. So kindergarten, because we're teaching them more and more about small group and the relationship that they're going to have with their small group and their peers. We start and keep those kids in our clubhouse, which is our large group space. So those kids will start in small group in our clubhouse about 10 minutes after the start of the service. At our busiest ministry hour, all of our from 2 and up come down to our clubhouse. So those younger students will join our kindergarten students for corporate worship. We have a host who introduces the Bible story. We watch we use Orange, so we use First Look. So they'll watch a 2 to 3 minute video that does a really great job of telling the Bible story way or the Bible story in a way that's really appealing to the preschool age group. And then after that, we'll revisit that memory verse and kind of learn the motions. We do that all month long. We'll keep the same worship song and the same memory verse because repetition is just so key with that age group. And then, so after that's over, our kindergartners will stay in their small groups in that large group environment, and our younger preschoolers will return to their preschool classrooms. So our pre-K kids, again, as we talked about a minute ago, we've cleared out those rooms. So they go into those environments and the two classroom, leaders will divide the kids into small groups, and they will do their application activities and games and art projects in small group from that point on. Our 2-year-olds, it is probably more center driven, where they'll go back to the classroom and, a 2-year-old is just so drastically different than a 4-year-old, where they're still playing, but the small, we still call them small group leaders because it just does such a great job of communicating the fact that you're the leader for this small group of kids, and your job is to build relationships with them. So even though they're playing, that small group leader is coming alongside of them and using the Bible conversation to talk and teach them. They will, at the end of the hour, kind of huddle up the kids the best you can with 2-year-olds. It is like trying to gather a group of kittens for prayer time, but they do the best they can, and just it's introducing that idea of a small group, and they're praying with and for those little guys before their parents come and pick them up. So that's kind of what a ministry hour looks like in preschool ministry.
That's awesome.
For us.
So you clearly, like you said, you want weekly volunteers, but it sounds like maybe you allow people to serve not weekly. Does that mean they're automatically on that flex or sub team, or are there like regular biweekly roles or something like that?
Gosh, we do have some bi-weekly role. We do have some leaders who have just, they've partnered with another leader, and they're really good about, they know between the two of them, I'm going to be here this week and I'm going to be here the following week. But typically when we're recruiting someone, we, wouldn't you share the vision for why it's important to do, to be a weekly leader? Like, most people will get on board with that when they understand that you're not just babysitting. It's not just childcare. You're not keeping a kid safe and allowing them just to have fun while their parents at worship. But this is actually that 3-year-old's ministry hour, and it is the relationship that they build with you. Like, they're coming not just to have fun at church. Eli's coming to see Mr. Scott. He wants to go because Mr. Scott is there and waiting on him. And when you kind of cast that vision for it, they want to be a part of that. But there are people that, for whatever reason, serve every other week, and that's okay. It's not ideal, but that's okay too. And I really feel like, you give somebody even a small opportunity to begin to build relationships. It's a win for the small group leader too. And pretty soon, they're wanting to be here every week because, Mr. Scott's shown up weekly because Eli's waiting for him to be there too. So it's a win for the small group leader and the kids in this small group. So when we do recruit, if we do have someone that says, I only want to be here on the first Sunday of every month, we will tell them, okay, so that you are going to be on what we call our flex team or our sub team, where on the first Sunday of every month, we look forward to seeing you, and we are going to use you to fill in for one of our weekly small group leaders who couldn't be here for whatever reason. So it's nice to kind of have that built-in buffer. And that's okay. That's okay. We do need subs in our ministry. But we do cast that vision for the importance of the relationship and the weekly volunteer.
So I know, not just preschool ministry, but children's ministry for sure. One of the frustrations of the children's pastor is the schedule, and people calling out and making sure everything's filled. So just to be clear about how yours works, so most people are weekly, so obviously there's not really a schedule there other than when they're going to be out. And then there are some people do biweekly, and they are kind of partnered with somebody. How do you handle the subs, and when they're here, where do they go? And if somebody does call out, like they're weekly, but they're not going to be here this Sunday, is that like a volunteer that leads that? One of your coaches? Is that staff? How does that work?
So yeah, both. So like I said, I have a team leader who is a part-time staff person. So like my babies and twos team leader, she's part-time staff. She oversees the volunteers who set up the classroom and prep for what goes on in those classrooms. So she's here during the week doing that. And she also oversees the schedule. We do use one schedule in Google Docs or OneDrive where I can go and see the entire schedule. And it's also what we'll print off on Sunday and we'll leave at the front, like the check-in desk. So we do that probably about 6 months at a time, which makes it super easy if we've got all those weekly leaders. They're just all plugged in. So if a leader needs to be gone, because we have really encouraged our coaches to be the front line of ministry, which is a volunteer position. Our coaches are volunteer to be the front line of ministry for the small group leader. The small group leader will communicate with their relational connection, which is their coach. And then the coach will pass that information on to the team leader. So if Susan needs to be gone on the 3rd week of September, we'll go into the schedule and just remove her and highlight her. And then the week before that, we're either able to plug in someone from our flex team or our sub team, or it gives us an opportunity to share with a parent. We do have a parent partnership. We call it our parent partnership plan, where we invite parents to support the ministry. I think it's kind of a bait and switch. Once they get in there and see both how fun it is to serve, like they're going to want to sign up. But as a parent, a long time ago, as a parent of a preschooler, I wanted to volunteer in the preschool ministry because not growing, we went to church growing up, but it was more like a drive-by experience. We didn't talk about God or Jesus or pray at home during the week. So as a mom who had been transformed by the gospel, I wanted that for my kids at an early age, but I didn't know how do you teach a 2-year-old or a 3-year-old about Jesus? So I signed up to serve so then I could see, well, how's the church doing this? And maybe it'll give me some ideas of how I can do that at home. So that parent partnership plan is just an opportunity for them to, hey, come and see what your kids' ministry is like, and also support the ministry. So they do. We send that out about quarterly, 3 or 4 times a year, where we just invite parents to pick a couple. We're not making anybody do it. It's just support the ministry by serving a couple times a year. And if every parent served just a couple times a year, we would never need subs. So we have parent partners that have picked different Sundays that they're going to participate, and we plug them into when those weekly leaders need to be gone.
That's good. That's awesome. So, it's kind of like you have the parent thing, plus you have the flex team. So you have a lot of ways to support that weekly volunteer thing. Because I know that's one of the challenges that leaders will think about when in children's ministry, when they think about going to weekly. They understand the value of the relationship and everything, but they're worried, well, if I have weekly leaders and one's out, there's nobody else. Whereas if it's every other week, they can always fill in. But what you have with the flex team and the parent partnership is the fill in.
Yes.
And it enables you to have weekly leaders, which I think is the best of all scenarios.
Yes. Right.
So I want to talk about redefining preschool ministry in a minute. But before that, is there anything else that you'd want to add about like your strategy or structure or approach to preschool ministry that might be helpful for people listening?
Excuse me. Yes. The last thing that has been so important for me as just a ministry leader is that that piece about defining the win for our small group leader. I realized this when a leader had come to me and she was frustrated. Some weeks, she just felt like she couldn't get all the way through the lesson. And then other weeks, she felt like maybe she had moved too fast through the lesson. And I, in that conversation, realized, oh my gosh, I have not defined the win for her. And so she's defaulting to it being the lesson. And so in that conversation with her, I said, your goal and the win for you is just showing up and building relationships with the kids in your small group. The lesson is only a tool towards that end. So I realized in that conversation, and I've had to be very intentional about keeping in front of me, is that if we don't define the win for this small group leader, that it is to build relationships and share the gospel, that every leader wants to win. If we don't define the win for them and we're just handing them a lesson, they're of course going to default to the win is the lesson. So my goal is to get through the lesson. It's just a tool towards that end of building a relationship. So that's something I have to continually keep in front of me. And we talk about it a ton at Westside, whether it's in preschool or grade school or even student ministry. And you'll hear, if you've ever had a conversation with John Huber, the 2 non-negotiables for ministry at Westside is relationships in the gospel, and how we do ministry will change. It changed 5 years ago. It will likely change again in the future, but the 2 things that will never change as long as we're doing ministry here at Westside is that we will prioritize the relationships and we will share the gospel.
And even that is an example of like clarifying the win, right? Like, so you could have a clear win for, what's it like to lead a small group of 4-year-olds. But then even just hearing relationships in the gospel is another way to make it clear.
Yes.
Right.
Easy to remember. Relationships in the gospel. Yeah.
So I'm excited because this fall, you and Kenny Conley and Kelly Stockdale are launching a course with us at Ministry Boost called Redefining Preschool Ministry. And so, what's interesting is as we're recording this, and as much as Kenny and I have talked about it, I actually don't know a lot about the details of it, what you're covering and all of that, because I've been so neck deep in everything else with Ministry Boost as we've launched it. So I feel like I'm like everybody else. I get to hear almost for the first time what the, topics will be or kind of the scope that you're going to cover. So tell us about the course and what you're going to talk about throughout it. It is a group course, so the idea is it's 20 people max per group on a video call, right, every week, I think. Tell us what it's going to be like in terms of the content.
Okay, so yes, Redefining Preschool Ministry is it's a project that I've been working on. They're two of my favorite people. Kenny Connolly and Kelly Stockdale are two of my all-time favorite ministry leaders in the country. And Kenny is actually a next-gen leader and a pastor I've known for, almost 10 years now. And we've worked on other projects, and he's just a ton of fun to work with, and I've learned so much from him. But about 3 years ago now, so I'm always calling Kenny and asking him questions, and he's very like-minded with Pastor John, so I've used him as a resource. But about 3 years ago, he moved from a church in Austin, Texas to mission in Phoenix, Arizona, and he's done some really cool things while he's been there, and it's been fun to watch him kind of take family next-gen ministry to the next level. But in that transition, he began to reorganize his preschool ministry model as well to align with the vision and strategy of their church by incorporating a small group and large group ministry model in the kind of the unique space that they have a very unique space for their preschool ministry there. But with the caveat that at the same time, he was looking for a preschool ministry director. So he was actually filling that role. And while he's championed kids and student ministry for like 2 decades, actually being in the seat of preschool ministry director or backfilling that position, it gave him a really unique perspective of the role and responsibility of the preschool ministry leader. So we talked a ton during that season, and he was actually calling me for the first time and asking a bunch of questions. And then you insert our friend Kelly Stockdale to the equation. She is a preschool ministry director turned next gen pastor at her church in Tennessee. But because of her time as a preschool ministry leader, she's just super passionate about preschool ministry and the very unique challenges that we face as preschool ministry leaders. So through conversation, we kind of collectively realized both how thankful we were for each other and kind of the unique insight and experience that we were able to share between the three of us, but specifically for Kelly and I, who really came into ministry as a volunteer turned vocational ministry leader. We realized how much we wished there had been something like what now is Redefining Preschool Ministry and that community when we came into our roles years ago. So to kind of answer your question, Redefining Preschool Ministry it's an 8-week long course that will help preschool or early childhood ministry leaders specifically to redefine and reinvent their preschool ministry. So preschool ministry is so much more than babysitting and childcare or just a nursery ministry hour. There's like unique opportunities to introduce God and the church to a little one in such a way that it makes a lasting impression on their heart and life. And every good structure needs a solid foundation. And that is the goal of an exciting and dynamic preschool ministry, giving kids a solid foundation to build their faith in Christ on. So the group course is kind of a combination of teaching content of like a weekly video lesson by an experienced leader with also weekly conversations and dialogue, as well as resources that will help every preschool leader take their ministry to the next level. So essentially, we want to use the things that we've learned to help the next and upcoming preschool ministry leader take the ball further down the field than we have, like exceeding even what God has allowed us to do in the years that we've been in ministry.
That's awesome. And you also launched preschoolministryleader.com like 4 months ago. I don't know, something like that, like 4 months ago. And you have free downloadable preschool director, job description, weekend experience checklist, volunteer application.
Checklist. Yes.
Yeah. There's a bunch of stuff on there. Preschool ministry job descriptions and checklists and, you know, all those things that on the search, some people are like, oh, that's really exciting because that's their personality. They love. Some people are like, oh, checklists, not checklists.
Oh, I love a checklist. I'm such
I do too. I'm one of those people. So like, I would be excited about it. I just know there are other people who are like, oh, another checklist, but they're helpful. Event planning guides, like whether you get excited about them like we do or not, they're really helpful. So that's a good site for people to go check out and download some of those free resources. And I'm looking at, again, probably for the first time, the different topics you're going to hit every week. And it really is just the core stuff. It's the role of the leader, volunteer roles, recruitment, curriculum and environments. I'm really excited about this one here, week 6, redefining preschool events. That's excellent. That's awesome. You could do multiple weeks probably on that, just with the different events that happen in there. But I'm sure you're going to talk about like baby dedication and things like that. And in relationship with parents. So I'm excited. I don't feel like there's ever really been enough stuff, help, resources, all of that focused on preschool ministry, certainly coaching and courses like this. So I'm really excited. I can't wait for people to jump in and take that with you this fall. You're also going to do a coaching group with You Lead that many of us are doing as well, but you're going to lead one with Jim Weidman for children's ministry leaders, right?
Yes, I'm so excited about that too. Yeah. So where a course is more of a short-term ministry, like theme specific and weekly learning experience around a topic like preschool ministry or volunteer recruitment, You Lead coaching is like next level leadership development where we unpack key strategies or leadership essentials that will move you and your ministry forward. So groups for You Lead coaching are no larger than 12 participants, plus 1 or 2 crazy influential and experienced coaches that make what would be your You Lead cohort. You're even leading, Nick, You Lead coaching, which like I want to sign up for yours too.
You can't because you're leading one. Not at the same time, I guess. But between you and Jim and me, we're the children's.
Yes.
So people will be leading basically the 2 kidmin groups, which I'm excited about.
I'm so excited.
And then there's Next Gen and student ministry and multi-site and women who lead.
And
I'm excited for the partnership too with Orange. We were both kind of doing different stuff, and I love that we're now kind of working together, at least on the coaching, side.
Me too. I just think watching like you and Kevin and Kenny and how influential you guys are, and then also Orange, like you just can't to combine your guys' efforts. Like we're just going to be able to do so much to help just move the Big C Church for impact the kingdom in a more substantial way. So yeah, I'm super excited.
I hope because the course preschool, redefining preschool is obviously very specific. There may be people though who they're going to do children's ministry coaching with You Lead and take the preschool, redefining preschool ministry course. And if they did, obviously we'd give a deep discount because we're giving away a free course with every You Lead coaching membership. Right. So that might be helpful for some people. Some of the groups, like the coaching groups and the courses, are so different that you may not do both. But a lot of them are like this, where like you can get in and be coached and for free, depending on the level of the course. This preschool one's the highest level. So it's not free, but it's definitely deeply discounted. But I love the idea that people can be in a coaching network and a cohort like I've been in and take one course that's kind of more in the weeds, on the ground level.
Right.
Kind of thing. Right. I think you get the best of both worlds. You get the relationships and the conversations and the strategy, high level talk, and then you get the course with the in the weeds on the ground, focused on one thing. Let's say for the next few months, which is going to be great. So
yes, that explains it. That explains it really, really well. They complement each other really well. Yeah.
Yeah, and I know a lot of people will do both. I mean, obviously, because we're going to give it away. But, so if you get a free course with coaching, of course, you're going to do both. But I think even if we weren't doing that, it's helpful for people to do both because I do think they will focus on different things and at different levels. So that'd be cool.
Well, God, one of the best things, too, about participating in those things is just the network of like-minded ministry. I don't in the community that I live in, I have the team that I work with, but no one really understands what I'm going through. That's why you and I have become such good friends, and Kenny Connolly and Kelly Stockdale. It's just to network and to hear what other churches and other leaders are doing that's winning, or to be able to share some place that you've won and how it influences another leader. There's just nothing has been more influential or helpful for me than just building a network of community of like-minded ministry leaders around the country. And then to get access to like these super crazy, influential, experienced, fun Jim Weidman. Like he's such a wealth of information, and he's just fun. He's just fun to be around. So I'm really looking forward to hanging out with him this next year with You Lead.
Yep, me too. So how can people connect with you? We talked about preschoolministryleader.com, but how can people connect with you if they have any questions?
Oh gosh, in all the ways. So all that, like Facebook and Instagram and Twitter and all those, it's just Erin_English. You can find me there, but you can also find me at preschoolministryleader.com. Also childrensministryonline.com. And of course the You Lead coaching by just going to ylcoaching.com. And of course, English at westsidefamilychurch.com.
We'll
shoot
put
me an
all
email
that in the show notes because people probably won't remember all those things.
I know.
But it's all good. We'll put them all in the show notes. They can check out more about the Redefining Preschool Ministry course at ministryboost.org. Can't wait for that to get going. Thanks for taking time to come on the podcast and talk preschool ministry, which was originally what we were going to have you on for earlier in the year. But it was like, wait a minute, you went from 250 volunteers to 400. We need to talk
Let's talk about that.
Let's put preschool on hold. So cool.
Yeah.
Thanks for coming back.
Absolutely. It's always fun talking with you, Nick. Thanks for having me on your podcast.
Well, I'm glad we were able to have Erin back on the podcast to talk preschool ministry. She leads such a great ministry there at Westside Family Church. And if you're in preschool ministry or children's ministry and you want to work on your preschool ministry this fall, getting in a coaching group or certainly doing that course, Redefining Preschool Ministry, might be for you. Well, regardless of whether or not you serve in preschool, something I don't want you to miss is the Orange Tour that's coming to 20 cities almost, I believe, this fall. I'll be at the Lancaster stop in Pennsylvania, so I'm looking forward to that. That's just a few weeks away for me. But check out and see if there's a stop near you at orangetour.org. You don't want to miss it. I love taking our team every year there. And like I mentioned in the beginning, this fall, Ministry Boost is launching a bunch of courses along with coaching in partnership with Orange. All of that is going to be, or at least registration for that, is going to be open during September, and it will all close on September 27th. So if you're interested in doing coaching or a course or doing both together, be sure to check that out and register by September 27th. If you have any questions, as usual, feel free to email me, nick@nickblevins.com. And don't forget to get the show notes for today's episode at nickblevins.com/episode 117. Thanks for listening. Hope you have a great week. Hope you're having a great start to the fall here in your church. And I'm sure you have a bunch of things going and plenty of things to work on and do and get started and events and trips and things like that to plan. I hope that all goes well. Hope you have a great week, and I'll catch you next time on the Family Ministry Podcast.
Thanks for listening to the Nick Blevins Family Ministry Podcast. We hope this helps you maximize your church's potential. We would love to hear stories of how you apply what you've learned. You can do that by leaving a comment on iTunes or in the show notes at nickblevins.com.